LA Mayor Karen Bass is proving to be one of the worst leaders that America has. The mayor promised voters before being elected that she wouldn't travel overseas. She told the New York Times, "Not only would I, of course, live here, but I also would not travel internationally. The only places I would go would be DC, San Francisco and New York in relation to LA." But where was she when the most devastating fires in LA's history broke out? In Ghana. And what was she doing there? She was on a taxpayer-funded trip to attend the inauguration of Ghana's incoming president. Because that's really important, and that's what serving the people of LA really looks like. But this isn't the only occasion that Karen Bass broke her promise. While mayor, she took an overseas trip to Mexico for another inauguration. She flew to Paris for the Olympics. And does Karen Bass regret being in Ghana while LA was on fire, while residents were forced to flee their homes while they burnt to the ground?
Looking back, would you have taken that trip overseas?
You know, I am going to focus today
but please,
on what we know.
But at least she figured out how to answer questions from journalists, because when she was first asked about all this, she just ignored reporters, hoping the questions would stop.
Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today?
Can you back up? I appreciate it.
Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today? Elon Musk says that you're utterly incompetent. Are you considering your position? Madam Mayor, have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today who are dealing with this disaster?
The scale of the devastation from these fires is hard to comprehend. At least 24 people have died and 23 are missing. The largest fire in the Pacific Palisades has burned more than 95 square kilometres and is right now only 14% contained. Countless homes and buildings have been reduced to rubble and conditions are expected to worsen. And under Karen Bass's so-called leadership, the budget for the LA Fire Department was cut by $18 million last year, which is actually less than her initial proposal, because initially Karen Bass thought it would be a good idea to cut it by more than $23 million, while making sure there was more money for the Civil and Human Rights and Equity Department so a transgender cafe could go up, which tells you exactly about where her priorities have been as mayor. Now, who was it that endorsed Karen Bass? Former President Barack Obama.
You've always been on the right side of the issues that we care so deeply about.
Thank you.
And I'm confident you're going to be an outstanding mayor of LA.
Oh, so, thank you so much.
You know, but as you know, you got to run through the tape.
Exactly.
So you got a little more work to do.
Exactly.
But I'm really proud of you and grateful for your friendship. More importantly, grateful for the service you've rendered all these years and all the stuff you're going to do in the future.
Well, thank you so much. Your support means the world to me, and it means the world of Los Angeles. Thank you so much.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Well, the people of LA have not had an outstanding mayor. They have been let down beyond belief. Families have lost everything, while firefighters have been trying to battle fires with no water, which is the result of years of mismanagement. Now, a Change.org petition calling for the resignation of Karen Bass has grown to more than 140,000 signatures. The petition states, despite the tireless efforts of our first responders, the city has been woefully unprepared to ensure the safety and well-being of its residents. Basic resources such as water and emergency services have been inadequate, and leadership has been nowhere to be found when it was needed most. The petition also calls for a full, transparent investigation into the failures in disaster preparedness, response and resource allocation that left LA vulnerable. Shark Tank's Kevin O'Leary told Fox Business he believes every taxpayer would like Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom gone.
I think every taxpayer in America, including those in California, would like to tie this aid to removing Newsom and Bass. Now, gone. Part of the deal would be, and I know Trump likes new ideas, here's one, not a dime until those two are whacked from their jobs immediately. They are so incompetent, and all of the decisions they've made led to this, and they're still making mistakes. They're horrific managers. Whack them.
Billionaire developer Rick Caruso, who ran against Karen Bass for mayor in 2022, says this was a disaster waiting to happen.
The brush up in these hills that are controlled by the city and the county, I would bet you that if they haven't been handled, mitigated, pruned, removed for probably 30 or 40 years. This was a disaster waiting to happen. And what's predictable is preventable. And who's paying the price are all of these people in their homes and their businesses tonight. Now, we'll rebuild, but the majority of this community is going to have a tough time rebuilding their lives.
Rick Caruso served as Commissioner for the LA Department of Water and Power in 1985, and in 2022, he was sounding the alarm that the city's fire department is understaffed.
I've been going around the city talking to firefighters and talking to paramedics. I've been talking to residents, and there's a deep concern throughout this city that the paramedics and the firefighters are understaffed because their budget has not been restored from 15 years ago when it was cut back. We have fire stations throughout this city that aren't mobilized because they don't have the staffing to do it, and it's just wrong. My plan as mayor is simple. We are going to restore the budget to bring the staffing levels back, to give the residents of Los Angeles the service they pay for and deserve. And that's the only way a city can be a great city. We have to reprioritize our budget in this city to make sure that our residents are safe and they're protected. And we can't do that unless we have a fire department that is fully funded and fully staffed.
Commentator Megyn Kelly says Democrats in LA are going to be voting differently after this horrific event.
But she's woke, and she's like, MK, everyone I know is ready to vote Republican. She's like, everyone I know, all of her woke friends, all of her Dem friends. She was like, we're all talking about how soon we can get Republican leadership into these offices.
Annalise Nielsen is in Los Angeles with the latest.
Look, the latest is the fear is exactly as you say, that there could be more people who've perished in these fires than we know right now. 24 have been confirmed, but there have been patrols of cadaver dogs trying to ascertain if any more people have lost their lives in these burnt out buildings. And when you have 14,000 structures across the city, that's not a process you can do quickly. There's also the subsequent deaths that could be related to it. One man we interviewed today said his mother was elderly and had to be evacuated and died in hospital on the way to another location. And so there'll be questions about whether those kind of deaths are part of the official toll. We're about 4 hours away from the official wind warning coming back in. That's 4 a.m. local time here in Los Angeles. They're expected to pick up and go right through to Wednesday local time. So that's the real risk, is that any fires could pick up in a very dramatic fashion. We have the two major fire fronts here in Los Angeles, the Palisades and the Eaton fire, both still out of control. They've been burning away from the city, but a quick change in wind could have those fire fronts travelling right back towards Los Angeles and some highly populated suburbs.
Let's go to the political fallout, because prior to this tragedy, the governor there, Gavin Newsom, was mooted as a potential Democrat presidential candidate. Certainly his name was mentioned in dispatches this time round. He's still on the table going forward, or was until this incident. A lot of pressure about his environmental policies and how much he's personally to blame. Is this the end of the road for Newsom?
Well, look, the tricky thing with recall of Newsom, which is a vote that voters can do in some states in the United States to essentially force out elected officials, is that it does take a significant number. When there was a recall vote trying to take Gavin Newsom out over his handling of the coronavirus pandemic and the shutdowns in California, he needed over 1.1 million signatures to take him out, and they didn't get to that number. He is now term limited as well, so he'll be finishing up at the end of 2026 and handing over at the beginning of 2027. So then the question is for voters, how much can you throw money at something like this? And essentially, this is still a very Democrat state. And so the numbers aren't in their favour. When he won by 60%, 54% the second time, it's not an easy proposition. But I can tell you, people here are angry. They are furious around how this has been handled, the questions over water. Those who aren't in just the throes of trying to get the basic necessities together to survive. Those especially we've spoken to who've been evacuated, have homes still standing, but don't know if they'll survive another week, are furious. And that's across the board. Republicans, Democrats, the handling of water, the fact that there weren't the resources in time, and the environmental laws that meant there was excessive amounts of brush around highly populated areas are the big questions we're hearing.